I mentioned a bit earlier, I have some clips with some representatives from our legislative delegation in Washington, and what I'd like to do is share a bit more of that with you at the top of this hour because they're all referring to the terrorism issue, and they're not terribly happy with the approach of President Obama and the Democrats in Washington who seem to think that this is just something that we need to live with instead of eliminating it. And I mentioned we had a conversation just before the show with Congressman Raul Labrador, and we were talking with him mainly about land in Idaho, and of course he would like to see a little less of it in federal control and more of it in state control. But I also had an opportunity to ask him his response to what the president said yesterday when the president felt that he was backed into a corner and refused to say radical Islam. And this is the congressman's response. I watched the remarks this morning from the president saying that, I don't know why I need to say radical Islam. And of course, there's a line from Eric Erickson today that says in 2008, the president said words matter. Uh, do you think that he's missing something here? I know that this has taken up a lot of the national conversation this week, and I don't want to forget other things, but it seems that he may be dropping the ball. Is that your take?
Well, he's dropping the ball and he's missing an opportunity to unify this nation. That's what's been most frustrating about this president. We had a horrific event happen in Orlando. It doesn't matter who you are, what your ideology is, what your religious background, what your ethnic background. What happened in Orlando is one of the most horrific events that has happened in our history. And our hearts go out to the people of Orlando. So at a time when the president could have unified the nation, could have gotten us all to rally together against radical Islamists, against people with radical ideologies. What he's doing is he's trying to divide the nation once again, talking about gun control and talking about gay rights. And I just don't understand why he wants to do that. This, when you had radical Christians attack churches, he calls it radical Christianity. And guess what? I stand with him when it's a radical Christian. I will call a radical Christian a radical Christian. Why can't he call radical Muslims? Why can't he talk about radical Islam? If the religion is a religion of peace, then they should not object to trying to turn away the radical element of their religion. And when he does this, and what was most telling is that he was more upset with Donald Trump and with people who talk about radical Islam than he was with the perpetrator of the crime, of the act that took away the lives of 49 people. There's 49 families in Orlando right now that are suffering. There's 49 families that are crying, that don't know what to do. And instead of uniting us around this cause, he's dividing us.
And I think that's well said. That is Congressman Raul Labrador telling us earlier this morning. Uh, I think you could say that he's very calm in his words, how he delivers his words, but I think that he is, like many of us, just absolutely disgusted with the response from the President of the United States. They will do anything they can to avoid insulting Islamic terrorists. And unfortunately, it's not helping the matter. They keep saying, well, we wouldn't want to make them angrier. Well, it seems to me that they're angry as all get out right now. I don't know how my argument would be simply the best solution to all of this is you kill the terrorists. And you do it before they can do it to you. And this notion that, well, we'll just create more. Where's your evidence? You don't have any evidence. We didn't create more terrorists or soldiers in Germany and Japan when we were bombing them back to the Stone Age during World War II. In fact, we brought them to their knees and they quit. To me, that's the evidence, and the liberals do not produce any. We have a telephone caller with us. It's 11 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 54, and you're on the air.
Yes, see, in Europe, Western Europe, the influx of these people has so changed the culture. The mayor of London has decreed that there shall not be any, and I don't know how to put this exactly, but any pretty girls on any billboards anymore. And you say, how in the hell is it that he could even begin to do such a thing? And here we were talking about, London and the English, and we got a Muslim mayor telling these people what to do because they have stood by and let this happen. And here we're in America, and we have this unbelievable tragedy, and our leadership doesn't even want to talk about it. Thank God Trump has said it in a very plain-spoken way. And I'll hang up, Bill. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. The mayor of London, one of his first decrees is he says that these are not ideal body types. All of these beautiful women who are modeling clothes on billboards. He wants to remove the billboards. I'm sure that in his view, if you just put a bunch of women up there in burqas, you can see a tent standing there holding a cup of tea saying "buy tea" or whatever. That's much better. But it shows you the mindset. He's no better than many of the liberals in this country who they just sit around and throw pebbles at small problems, while big problems just fester and get worse and the infection grows. 912, and you're up next. You're on Top Story with Bill Colley.
I see this president, and the only thing that I see him doing is trying to destroy America as it was constituted and to destroy Israel. Can anybody deny that anymore?
Good point. You're right. He's not. He is an angry man, and I think that's related to the anger his father had as a colonial citizen of the British Empire. And this is it. This is the opportunity to get back. Is that it? There was a Jim Bishop. Thank you for the call. I'll get to my next caller in just a moment. Jim Bishop, the former newspaper columnist, who I met when I was young, once shared a story that there were people in his neighborhood when he was growing up called get even guys, the guys who never forgot a slight, and they were and years could go by and then they would get even with someone. It seems to me Mr. Obama is carrying a big chip around on his shoulders, and unfortunately it clouds his judgment. You're up next. You're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Morning, Bill. Hey, for years, the liberals blamed George Bush and said that the only reason we really went to Iraq was because of oil. It was a secret thing going on, that we were somehow after the oil, had nothing to do with new weapons of mass destruction. But Donald Trump comes out and says that possibly, we got a Trojan horse situation going on in here, and Barack Obama, maybe there's a deeper element going on here, and they flip their lids. They go crazy. So it's okay for them to blame George Bush and come up with conspiracy theories on what we were doing in Iraq, but Donald Trump can't do it for Barack Obama.
Thank you much for the call. Gee, you think there's a double standard going on here? Yeah. It's a good thing we have some conservative media in this country. Jim Risch, U.S. Senator from Idaho, is appearing on Situation Room with the Roman gnome, Wolf Blitzer, and the two of them are having a discussion about terrorism. I mentioned this the other day. You've got media now that is trying to shoehorn this story. Oh, well, he's not really a terrorist, and Islam had nothing to do with it. He was just a spurned gay man, and he wanted to get even. Jim Risch really schooled Wolf Blitzer on CNN, and he said, look, sometimes you have more than one narrative that takes place in a terrorist attack.
This seems to be a convergence of more than one motive. They always argue, is this a terrorist act or a non-terrorist act? In this case, they've been debating, is it a terrorist act or was it a hate crime? It doesn't have to be one motive. It can be a combination of them. And I think there's at least three in play here. Obviously, those two, plus he's obviously had some severe mental difficulties in the past, as described by an ex-wife. So I think you have all three of these coming together. Which one was the one that was the greatest motive? I don't think anyone will ever know.
Why did he pick a gay nightclub?
Well, I don't know. One would assume, as we sit here and talk, that if he was committed to the Islamic cause, and he says he was, not one particular group, he named several and seemed to be a little confused about that, although all of their core beliefs are very similar, if not identical, as far as what they want. But at the heart of it all is radical interpretation of Sharia law.
And he was looking at several targets. He just basically flipped a coin and took this one, and if he had gotten out of there, he would have gone after others. You're next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. I think the thing we need to realize is that Islam has declared war, especially on the U.S., which we're supposedly the great Satan, and, of course, Israel. They're at the top of the list. They've declared war on us, and for our president to say that we're not at war with a religion, actually it's a theology, as you and I know, we're at war with Islam. And those that follow the Quran are commanded to kill us infidels or we convert. In fact, I realize now why there's so many Muslims in the world. How would you like to have a recruiting? You send missionaries out, and if they don't convert, you kill them. Well, obviously, I think this has been their way of recruiting and proselyting for centuries, and I think there's a lot of Muslims that really don't follow the Quran. But anyway, this is the whole thing. If they follow the Quran, they're commanded to kill us, and they become radicalized, whether they've been here a long time or whether they're going to be refugees. But we need to stop the refugees, stop all Muslims from coming in this country, at least put a pause on it.
Thank you much for the call, too. And it reminds me of comments I saw this week from James Woolsey, the former CIA director, who is a Democrat, but who has been saying all along, he's written books about this, saying you do not need many of these people to enter your country to cause a disruption, and then to start demanding Sharia law and saying you better make your country adjust to us versus we adjust to your country. These are things that liberals are all too often willing to just bury their head in the sand and ignore. I want to share more with what U.S. Senator Jim Risch said to Wolf Blitzer on CNN in just a few minutes. We'll do it on the other side of the break because the liberals right now, there was a call today. I happened to see it on, I think, Real Clear Politics, and it's one of a liberal spokesman in the media who is saying that we need to eliminate the Second Amendment. They're screaming that Trump is trying to he's taking away our First Amendment rights. He won't let Pravda on the Potomac get on his campaign bus, and that's mean. Good golly, you've got thousands of different websites now covering politics. You can't possibly give everybody access to the candidate. But they seem to feel that they deserve it more than everybody else. First Amendment doesn't mean you get to come into my house and follow me to the bathroom and ask me questions. You got it? Yet, media thinks they run this country. Well, if you want to eliminate the second, you got to go through the first, I would suppose, right? And the only part of the First Amendment they care about is freedom of the press. They don't care about the other freedoms that are guaranteed in there. That is your freedom of religion and assembly and petition. And, these are things that they would just as soon chuck. It's all about them. But when it comes to the Second Amendment and defending yourself, you can't do that. You can't have that. No, sirree. In fact, I mentioned in the last hour of the program, there is some whack job communist puke professor at UCLA who is suggesting that we set up secret courts in this country, in America, that would be designed to take your firearms away. These are dangerous people, my friends, and we live in dangerous times. These are the allies of the terrorists who go into nightclubs and gun down 100 people or so. It's not you they have to be worried about, but they look at it otherwise. We've got more on this subject coming up in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. As I mentioned, U.S. Senator Jim Risch was appearing on CNN's Situation Room with Roman gnome Wolf Blitzer. Now, Blitzer, of course, is a flaming liberal. You would think a little Jewish man from Buffalo, New York would realize that he's likely at the top of the Islamic hit list. But no, he's on board with taking away your firearms. As I mentioned, Jim Risch really schooled him during their conversation. He did it in such a low-key way. You might miss it otherwise, but this is Risch talking about the Constitution after the Roman gnome brings up the great liberal dream, of course, of eliminating the Second Amendment.
If you're going to take away someone's constitutional right, which it is a constitutional right to buy a gun. A lot of people in this country don't accept that, but it is, under the Second Amendment, your right to buy a gun. If you're going to take that away from someone, be it a veteran, be it someone who doctor says has a mental disease,
but someone who's suspected,
or someone
who's under surveillance
terrorism.
For terrorism, loyalty to ISIS, should that person be allowed to go buy this kind of weapon?
If indeed there is a due process in place where the person can defend themselves, then I think that there can be a process whereby you can stop people from purchasing a firearm. But you can't just put someone on a list and say, there they are, they can't buy a firearm. This is a constitutional right. In America...
So here's in light of the events that happened and what we now know, do you want to reconsider your position on allowing people on a suspected terror watch list, for example, to be able to go out and buy an AR-15?
If they're simply on a list, Wolf, that will never, ever pass constitutional muster. You must give a person who's put on a list due process to get themselves off of the list. We've learned that with the no-fly list and a number of others. When you have and this rises to the level of a constitutional right.
Should someone be banned from flying, put on a no-fly list, but that same individual be allowed to buy a weapon?
Well, it depends on what the facts were that put them on the no-fly list. Being put on a no-fly list is not denying someone a constitutional right. Not being able to possess or purchase a weapon is a denial of a constitutional right.
You think the liberals can get that clear? It's a document that we have, and it says that these are God-given rights, and you can't take them away from people. There is nothing listed in the Constitution about getting on an airplane. So you can see the little wheels going in the Roman gnome's head as Risch is saying this, and it's like, this does not compute, this does not compute, this does not compute. Oh! I have this from the Daily Signal. The terrorist watch list explained. The terrorism screening database only includes details used to identify terrorists. The database itself does not include classified details on terrorists regarding what they have done and how we have been tracking them. This classified information is maintained in the Terrorist Identities Data Mart environment for foreign terrorists and the FBI for domestic terrorists. For an individual to be included on the no-fly or selectee list, additional evidence of his threat to aviation security and clear identifying information is needed above and beyond the reasonable suspicion standard. Then the writer goes on to say this. Omar Martin was subject to 2 FBI investigations, 2013 and 2014. He was added to the screening database. Following the conclusion, he was removed from the terrorism screening database. As a result, when he went to purchase the firearms, he was not in the file and was not flagged. Even if he had been on the list, though, he likely would not have been prevented from purchasing a weapon, although the FBI would have been alerted, the writer says, and could have responded and investigated further. So there you go. But he was not on the list, but even if he had been, it would not have prevented him. And so all of the talk, the president, take door to door, take your guns away. Because radical Islam, I can't say it, is not the problem. It's all of you whiteys out there, you war veterans, and you Christians, we're going to come and disarm you, and I'll send Hillary out in my place. Bolin lobby, as they say. 928, you're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, 2 thoughts. Years ago, our people had it right. When people coming over from Europe, they would be stopped at Ellis Island. If they had a disease, they would be quarantined. Second point is we've been with a lot of terrorists for many years. What's forgotten is Bobby Kennedy was killed by a Muslim, Saran.
Yes. Yeah.
What's forgotten is Bobby Kennedy.
And I thank you for the call. In Amarillo, Texas yesterday, it was a Muslim who was taking hostages at Walmart and planning to kill them before police killed him. And yet nobody wants to talk about that. An Iranian Muslim. Coming up on the end of this half hour, one more half hour of the program left. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 30. Well, we don't want to hurt their feelings. The summer heat has gone away, but it will be back next week. We're looking for temperatures to rebound into the 90s next week, which means you may need some repairs done on your AC unit or just a tune-up, and we've been recommending you give the professionals a call at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Make sure the job is done right the first time and set yourself up for a great summer. You can go see Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, or give Ramsey Heating and Electric a call at 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers, at Ramsey Heating and Electric. As I said, we've got more on this subject coming up in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you. There's a great video that was put out. One of my old general managers from my last radio station sent it to me from Michael Voris, who is a Catholic. He owns a Catholic TV station in Detroit, Michigan. And he has some comments about why media and Muslims, and of course he's talking specifically about Roman Catholics, but he also admits that they're, after all, Christians. I'd like to share his comments with you in the next half hour and how suddenly the alliance of media, Muslims, and liberals around the world has suddenly been shaken by the events that happened in Florida over the weekend. Details on that coming up. It's 57 at 9:30.